So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the webinar by Dr. Karina Jenson, who is today to talk about leading global product innovation, the new leadership competencies. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Jenson today with us to talk to all of us. She is a practice director at the Center of Leadership and Effective Organization and also a professor of global innovation and leadership at the NEOMA Business School in France. She's also the founder and managing director of Global Minds Network, which is a consulting and a training firm. She's an international management consultant, change facilitator, and an educator with over 20 years of experience. She has led global initiatives with cross-culture and cross-functional teams in order to accelerate organizational innovation and international market performance for leading multinational firms. She's also the author of a new book on leading global innovation that presents a new framework for facilitating multicultural innovation and collaboration. We are very fortunate to have Dr. Jensen today with us. So, without any delay, I would like to hand over the mic to Dr. Jensen and start the webinar. Just a heads up: after she's done with the webinar, you're welcome to ask a few questions to her, and we'll get started now. Dr. Jensen, over to you.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and very pleased to participate in this webinar for the Product Leadership Institute, and looking forward to having a chance to present to the Executive MBA group. So I will, again, as mentioned, focus on leading global product innovation. So share my research and discoveries on the new leadership competencies. And I wish everyone a bonsoir or good evening. I'm calling from Paris, France, so I hope the connection will hold and we'll have a strong connection. It's very chilly winter here in Paris, and I'm sure you have much nicer and warmer weather in Bangalore. So I'll get started, and we'll look at what's happening today in terms of product management and innovation. And there is, it's a very turbulent, of course, and a changing environment with a lot of challenges as well as opportunities, but everybody's feeling the pressure in terms of looking at, well, how do we achieve high performance? How do we do this within our teams? How do we ensure effective process? And plan. So I'm sure that you've all experienced these pressures, and they keep changing and evolving. So the question then is looking at, well, how do we keep up with the global leadership challenge in that sense? Because there's a constant focus on continuous product and service innovation, and not only in domestic markets, but also pleasing clients and customers in international markets. While ensuring market growth and sales growth or sales results, as well as rapid time to market and delivery, and staying ahead of the competition. So everybody's feeling these pressures, and in a sense, more ecosystems or collaborative opportunities are being created with suppliers, partners, and customers to meet those challenges. But at the same time, we see that the value chain is becoming shorter, of course. So how can we rapidly identify customer market needs through R&D, and then move quickly into design and development, and then, of course, deliver that to the market and ensure customer satisfaction. So this means there is more demand and pressure in terms of the competencies to be able to navigate and lead and manage these challenges for team leaders as well as team members. And if we look at achieving global performance today, the inability of leaders to really facilitate innovation and collaboration affects organizational performance in many ways, from concept to market. So it could affect concept design, not having enough knowledge about the customer market, various regions, looking at strategic planning, perhaps not positioning or using effective strategic focus. There's also marketing in terms of messaging and positioning, operational efficiency, or is the right process or a project process in place? And then is there a truly strong customer connection no matter which location? And ultimately, of course, that affects sales performance around the world. So if we look at the new competencies, what does this mean for leaders, especially product leaders? And I'm going to share two research findings from two well-known firms, Deloitte Global Human Capital and DDI, that is focused on leadership research. And I think they very much capture what is being seen now in terms of a demand for new competencies. And that is really looking at more empowered teams that are driven by a new model of management. And we're looking at a breed of younger, more globally diverse leaders. And I think this is very true in terms of what Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends is reporting, is that this will require more collaboration, a more understanding of diverse generations, and as well as diverse cultures. And the second one I'd like to mention in terms of new competencies, which I've seen in my research again and again, is looking at, well, what are the skills that need to be developed by leaders? And the most critical that need to be considered, but where leaders admit they are most ineffective, is leading across cultures, ensuring communication across cultures, integration of foreign environments, leading across generations is a big one today, and fostering employee creativity and innovation is a big focus as well. If we look at the challenges and the new competencies, the big question is looking at, well, how can you as a product leader ensure that there's effective collaboration and execution from concept to market across functions and across cultures, especially in a digitally connected environment. And this is really looking at how to bring everyone together and again, ensure successful results. And in that sense, what I'd like to start with is looking at what is the leadership journey. So how are competencies being developed today, especially in terms of leadership and management? And if you look at the competencies, there are several layers to consider. The first one is really the core layer, looking at what are your leadership values. What is it that you feel is expected in your current position and role, and what is demanded in terms of your environment. So this is where we develop core values. There are various models that are available today for developing these leadership competencies. But once you understand your core values and competencies, then you move to the next layer and look at cultural dimensions. So whether you're working in a domestic market or international markets, there are often cultural variations or differences. And so to understand, based on your core values, what are those differences and how do you adjust to those situations when you have a cross-cultural and cross-functional team? The next layer is cultural interaction. Well, today in a digitally connected environment that's also multicultural, how are you rapidly being able to respond and collaborate with such a diverse team environment? And finally, looking at the global leadership context. What is your particular context within your work environment? What's demanded in terms of your market and customers, as well as your product or service strategy? So if we look at that very quickly, if we look at the core values, we don't have time to go through all of the different leadership models. I'm sure that you have your favorites or you've been exposed to a few. And I'd like to just mention one that captures most of the leadership competencies that are being, that have received a lot of attention currently. And those are leadership competencies that address the need for leaders to be more collaborative, more inclusive, and more motivational. And so I'd like to mention the Kouzes and Posner model, which I think brings together these values. And a lot of the talk today is about building trust, as well as building a positive and inclusive team environment. And in that, we look at challenging the process. You still need to initiate. You need to look at how could we better innovate within the organization. As a leader, how do you challenge those processes? Second would be inspiring a shared vision. How are you inspiring and motivating others to support and contribute to your projects and initiatives? And how to enable others, in a sense, to empower them and have them play significant roles within your projects and initiatives. And then modeling the way, really, what are the behaviors that you are demonstrating as a leader or manager, and how is that really setting great example and motivating your team members to adapt and develop better ways. And finally, encouraging the heart, where we talk a lot about people-centric behaviors today, looking at how to really make people feel recognized and that they feel that they're very motivated to contribute to projects and initiatives. So this is looking at the core values in a sense, but then of course you have many models that speak about cultural dimensions and cultural interactions. I will only speak of one. And that really in general refers to how our leaders and managers developing cultural intelligence. And that means in a really rapidly fast moving business environment, how are you acquiring the knowledge for operating in different foreign environments? So recognizing and understanding the need for cross-cultural knowledge wherever you're operating. So understanding the market, the customers, having the right intelligence. Mindfulness, observing and interpreting certain situations. How can you immerse yourself not only with your teams in other locations, but also better understand customer behaviors? And finally, how do you respond to that? How are you adaptable or using adaptability to recognize situations and the needs and to respond and deliver on those needs? So finally, we reach what I call what I showed earlier, the last layer, which really speaks about the business context. And this is the context or layer that I'll be speaking about for the rest of the webinar. And this is where I'd like to share my findings from my research in the past 5 years, which have involved 3 studies of over 200 global project leaders, or many of them within product management and innovation management, who have particular profiles because they're responsible for cross-cultural and cross-functional teams, as well as global responsibility, and focused on bringing new innovations, products, services from concept to market. And these leaders were based within 45 multinationals with headquarters in Europe, Asia, and North America. So you'll see a diversity of practices so that I can share, but also common challenges and opportunities as well. And again, cross geographies across 3 continents and 16 countries. All of these were multinationals with quite well-known brands and who are struggling to innovate better in a rapidly changing market. So if we look at the context, which you will I'm certainly know well or you recognize, if we look at the current context, we're looking at 3 phases that need to be addressed in bringing products, new products and services from concept to market. So front-end innovation is becoming more and more important and critical, looking at how you and your role as a product manager and leader, how are you spending time in the creation stage in terms of discovery within the market and the customers having more intelligence and being able to define opportunities and recognize them. And then once you've been able to identify the concept needs, to go to planning and look at, well, how will you be able to integrate knowledge from your cross-functional, cross-cultural teams to develop the right strategy, the right business case, and optimizing the research and knowledge available. And this is the most critical stage. This is the most critical stage where you really have to tap into market intelligence for customer, product knowledge, market knowledge. And then once you have positioned this well, then going to validation, making the right decision, identifying what's needed for the final concept, going to design and development stages, and then phase, new product development, and then of course going to market, ensuring marketing and sales teams are ready and you're able to launch this with great success and create a good marketing and sales momentum. And if we look at this in my research, where most product leaders and organizations are having challenges is in the front end innovation phase, which is most critical to ensure successful execution. So this is where you really need to focus on the creation or ideation stages and looking at how do you also ensure effective planning to ensure successful execution. And the challenge is there is looking at collaboration, and I'm not only speaking of multicultural collaboration. In that sense, I mean, how are you collaborating across cultures, across regions, but also functions. And here I found the biggest challenges in doing so with teams is trust building. So, which is probably no surprise to any one of you, but looking at how to build a trust and a strong connection to ensure support of the team. Also, team engagement and participation. How are you ensuring that you have the knowledge available for effective planning and interactive dialogue? So the challenge is to have a continuous communication and knowledge and intelligence from the field. And that in the final stage is really understanding support, understanding of the global strategy overall from your team. And what I've found in my research is that most organizations are still struggling with more participation. So what typically happens today with a lot of organizations is that innovation is centralized. It may either be focused within one group or department, or it's not typically shared across groups in the organization, or it's not typically shared with teams in different locations either. So I found that most of the creation or ideation stage where the innovation happens, discovery and identifying new ideas, often happens at headquarters. It's very centralized for specific teams, and local team members who know the customer, who know the market, aren't involved. The same goes for planning. Planning, which is so essential to execute well across markets, is often centralized and delegated to a specific group, and not all team members are involved in order to provide sufficient market intelligence. See, a validation, there's a bit more participation, which is critical to validate the concept for diverse markets and ensure the concept speaks to customer needs. And finally, of course, execution, everyone is involved because you need to market and sell that final concept. So when I speak of global or local strategy, the question is, today the challenge is that companies are so centralized, many of them, large organizations, that they are not connecting well to local needs. And in that sense, maybe creating products or services that just don't serve or respond to customer needs. And so what I'm finding in my research is that a lot of organizations are looking at switching that dynamic. Instead of going from global, centralized, to a distributed or local execution, they're looking more and more at starting at the local level. So let's start and really immerse ourselves, spend more time in the market, more time with the customers, and then move from ideation to central planning. So really starting out in the field, in the local market, spending a lot more time there to gather ideas from local teams and customers, and then bringing that back in order to develop an integrated plan that represents everyone's knowledge. So, and how does that impact your leadership style? And this is very interesting in the sense that because of the leadership competencies, it's really changing the criteria and how you work within the product cycle or the product innovation cycle. So if you typically look at a cycle where you're leading such a project, you'll need to move the team from concept, ideation, creation stages, looking at discovery, looking at generating new ideas, to planning. How do you develop a solid plan and business case? And then how do you validate that for customers and market needs? And then finally bringing that to an execution phase with the teams in terms of team and project performance. And that each phase is requiring more specific leadership skills and skills that really speak to more people-centric and relationship building skills. So if we look at the creation stage, what I found in my research is often that leaders need to become more empowering. Leaders, in a sense, need to take on a more of a co-creation role, or looking at how to inspire a vision that will motivate their team members to come forth with more ideas, contribute more knowledge that's needed to create a concept that really speaks to market needs. And then moving into planning stage, how are leaders using more inclusive behaviors or competencies to integrate the necessary knowledge and to ensure that they can build a more effective business plan. And then in terms of validation, using precise analytical skills and ensuring that you're integrating the right knowledge to create the best decision or best validation for those concepts. And finally, execution. And it's all about communication these days. How are you as a leader using effective communication and knowledge sharing to ensure effective execution all throughout the process? So if we look at that in a close-up very quickly, as I mentioned, empowering in the creation stage, again, how are you creating the common vision and engaging the team and aspiring new ideas and solutions, going to inclusive planning, so understanding different perspectives from the team and ensuring a more collaborative and relationship-based leadership style, and then going into validation and showing more decisive behaviors in terms of helping direct the team, but creating an integrative process where you're optimizing knowledge and then ensuring a transition to execution. And finally, more communicative behaviors throughout the execution process, a lot more listening to market needs, looking at how you can facilitate global and local knowledge sharing for effective execution, really connecting the global network. And that, in a sense, is what I call collaborative dialogue. So looking at how are you really listening to customers and markets, especially your teams who are connected to these customers and markets. How are you ensuring time to have those conversations with them, and through open communication or social networking, and then how are you responding to their needs or requests in terms of feedback and resources and support. And there I'd like to mention very briefly the importance of trust building. And what I've found in my research is very much trust building is really connected to the product management process. So if you have a solid project process, the question is, how are you integrating communication within that project process? And what's really critical to build trust is a social interaction at the start of the project process, front end, and and then moving to open communication throughout your process, ensuring transparency. How are you acting and delivering on promises to team members, depending on their needs throughout from concept to execution. And then finally, how are you ensuring that each and every team member is contributing and feeling that they can make a significant difference or impact on your project? So it's really ensuring transparency and allowing all voices to be heard and ensuring that everyone can contribute. And if you look at the digitally connected world that we're living in, of course, technology can help us facilitate those conversations and the dialogue, but it also requires face-to-face time, especially at the start of the project and the kickoff. And this is where finding out more and more activities related to social networking, knowledge sharing platforms, as well as cross-cultural learning and cross-functional learning are really critical to ensuring successful product process and launch. So this is where you and your organization need to look at what is an effective infrastructure in a sense. How are you creating interactive workflows throughout the project process? What kinds of collaborative tools are you using along with forums? And how or who is the knowledge facilitator? Are you the facilitator of this knowledge or communication flow as the project leader, or are you do you have a team member who's facilitating that process? So if you wrap this up and like to summarize it in a sense using my framework, this is what I call the multicultural innovation framework. But what I found in my research, and this is something that I shared in my book on leading global innovation, is that throughout the project cycle, if we look at a typical project cycle from concept to market, we look at of creation, planning, validation, go to market, and then event and ultimately high performance. You need to pay attention as a leader. You need to pay attention to the vision and how you're creating a collaborative vision in terms of your leadership and competencies and behaviors. How are you transferring that to strategic co-creation in terms of planning? How are you optimizing knowledge of your team members? And then how are you moving to a more collaborative dialogue? How are you using your communication and knowledge sharing competencies to ensure that every team member is contributing the right type of knowledge and and market intelligence that are important for your project? And then finally, how are you creating the right team climate and organizational or culture in a sense, or team climate or space as I call it, ensuring that the team feels that they have transparency, they have an open environment, they have the resources and support they need to effectively succeed and execute on the project. So if we look at the implications, the role of leaders, global and local, are becoming more it's more of a role as a knowledge facilitator and an innovation orchestrator. And what I mean by that is that leaders more and more really need to develop their more communication in terms of facilitating knowledge sharing opportunities with their team. On one hand, in the front end, and then on the other hand, in terms of execution, looking at how to effectively orchestrate that process. That means listening, recognizing, responding to local voices, meaning to your team members as well as customers, and also understanding diverse views and looking at how you can optimize the new knowledge and ideas. And using opportunities to promote more interactive dialogue through meetings, through knowledge platforms, and various tools, so that you can ensure you have the necessary knowledge and the ideas, and that everyone is engaged and inspired to execute successfully. So that it's kind of an overview that, I mean, I have shared overview of my thoughts and my research around leading global product innovation. I know that you have a few questions. A few questions have been sent to me as well. So I'd like to stop here and hear more of your thoughts or questions about leading global product innovation. And then I also have a few case studies that I can share too to give you more specific examples. I don't know if you can text or see if I see any questions in the chat box.
If some of you have questions, maybe you unmute your mics and maybe you can ask the questions now.
Yeah, I see one. How do you propose population of a global network? That would be, to me, the team members that you're working with. It depends on your project. Global network, meaning that it would be the team members, cross-functional team members that you're working with, as well as those located in the different geographies if you're working with various markets and customers. So look, that's what I would call the global network. How are you optimizing the global network within your organization? Oops, let's see.
So I think Dr. Karina will take the questions that were, collected from the class, and maybe you can answer a few of them now, and then we can mail them as we have already mailed them over to you. Maybe you can send in your response to us, and then we can share it with the participants. The question is a very interesting question, which says, how can an introvert be a great communicator and an influencer?
This, well, it doesn't directly relate to my research, but I think that if you if we refer back to the new competencies that are required, they speak more and more to interpersonal skills, looking at how you can facilitate knowledge sharing in terms of ensuring the teams have the right tools, the right support to develop new ideas, to contribute knowledge on one hand. How can you integrate those ideas and knowledge into the planning phase? In terms of execution, looking at how do you orchestrate that. So as an introvert, I see an introvert as being someone not particularly shy, but someone who gains their energy internally. So great thinkers and analysts. And I think this is where, as an introvert, you can optimize your ability as a thinker or to bring those ideas to your team members, and then you just need to allow them time also to contribute and share their ideas, to have productive conversations around the concept design and development phase. And also you have the ability to integrate that knowledge through the planning phase and execution, where you can be a good, effective project orchestrator as well. So really developing the processes necessary throughout the project cycle or the launch cycle. I found one question that I found interesting, and I think it refers to a lot of the questions, is looking at how can product managers better contribute towards innovation in global companies. And I think this is an important point because often innovation is relegated to an innovation officer, an innovation manager. And I found in my research that product managers and product leaders more and more are critical to the innovation process because you have the full overview of innovation. You're working with a product from the concept stage to execution or to go to market. And in that sense, you have a unique opportunity to influence innovation throughout the process. And so I really see product leaders and product managers as the future innovators, because you have that ability to influence the innovation from the concept stage to market stage. And that's something that I would encourage all of you to really optimize in your organization. And and looking at examples, a lot of the product leaders that I spoke to, they were VPs, directors, senior managers of global product management, global product innovation. A lot of them spoke about the importance of their role in terms of integrating different groups in the organization, and also developing better processes for innovation, and making sure they could integrate more knowledge throughout the organization. They could integrate more conversations and more learning from functional groups, as well as groups from different countries, or who were responsible for the geographies.
So another interesting question that was sent was, and I'll kind of club these two questions. One is in the chat box and one is in the email that we received. So what is multicultural collaboration, and how do you actually incorporate local and regional needs into a multicultural model of product management?
How to integrate local needs?
Yes.
So this is, I'll refer back to the local to global strategies. What I'm finding today, the biggest challenge for organizations is that they are so centralized, especially at headquarters, and that perhaps the concept development stages, NPD as well as GTM, are often centralized and to a specific group. And what needs to happen is that you need to connect the conversation to those markets and customers. And so a better way to engage them is what I've seen at companies like Cisco and Airbnb, Philips. They go out to the regions. They have a tour. They go out to the markets and their key markets where they have important customers, and they work with the local teams at the very early stages of concept creation. Go out there and immerse themselves in the field and to those key markets, whether they're in Asia or Europe or North America. And then once they've had the co-creation sort of process, once they've received enough insights about customer market needs, then they bring all of those discoveries back to headquarters, where they can work together to integrate knowledge and create a strategic plan that really speaks to market needs.
So another interesting question says, in the context of the digital business transformation, the IoT, how should the leadership cope with building partnerships on alliance? Which again, I would say would be multicultural and based on in various regions. So technical collaboration, technology collaboration across cultures. Would you like to share some thoughts on that?
Technical collaboration, I'm
In the
not sure exactly what you mean by.
digital business transformations, like the IoT applications. How does the leadership cope with building partnerships and alliances? So now, when we are talking about collaboration, it's not only the employee-employer collaboration. Where now, I think this question goes into the collaboration along the value chain now.
Yeah, my research is more focused on internal collaboration, because I find that this is most critical. If you cannot master internal collaboration, it has a direct effect on external collaboration. So most of my research is really focused on how are you as a leader manager going to ensure effective internal collaboration so that you can be more successful in delivering to your partners and customers. And this will at times, depending on the phase, of course, involve customer focus as well as partner focus. But what's really critical right now is to look at how do you engage your teams as a leader? How are you going to be able to ensure effective collaboration? Because a lot of your team members are connected to the market, depending on their roles, and they're connected to customers. So they have a very important role in relaying that information to you and sharing that knowledge. Yeah, so it would be more focused on this. I see there's some questions around the top 3 or 4 challenges in today's VUCA environment for leaders. and I'll refer back to some of the competencies mentioned earlier too. The top challenges that I'm seeing in terms of my research and other findings from research firms is that uh, leaders are dealing with the challenge of course, mastering or navigating communication and collaboration across a digitally connected environment. So what are the most effective knowledge platforms and social media tools? I don't see that there's a perfect solution right now, and companies are still experimenting. What should be the best knowledge platform where we can all engage in a good dialogue and conversation? What are the best social media tools? So this is one that needs to be more effectively facilitated. That's what I talk. That's what I mean when I talk about knowledge facilitators. I also see that leaders are struggling with ensuring continuous or sustaining creativity and innovation in the organization. Most of you probably work in organizations where you have constant pressure to deliver, and there's very little time or space made for you and your team to have those moments of sort of ideation, creativity, and look at how to create future opportunities. So the question is, how are you making space and time for you and your team to do that? And then the final area is in terms of managing across functions and cultures. Very few organizations talk about culture today, but as you see in our changing environment, culture is becoming very important. Customers want you to speak to their needs and their local needs. And your local team members really understand those needs. And so you need to connect with them in a much more effective way.
So I think, Dr. Karina, there's one last question which says, is it necessary for the development team and the product team to collaborate and work together, and how do we achieve that?
Very much so. And again, I'll refer to the earlier slide where I showed the three phases. And I think that today, in terms of the cyclical process that I showed you, the innovation cycle, that each is interdependent. So no longer, I think that it's a mistake to only focus on one phase, look at product management or product development as NPD or go to market. We also have to look at the front end phase, front end innovation. And this is really what product leaders and managers can help facilitate. So how can we move from the front end where you look at the initial concept, how are you being able to optimize or influence that stage where you're bringing in the best ideas, the best knowledge. And then once you've identified the concept, how are you ensuring that there's an effective plan behind it and strategy? And then how are you ensuring that design and development needs are being met according to the concept and the strategy? And then of course, how are you bringing that to market? What makes sense in terms of positioning and messaging, in terms of delivering it and ensuring success in the markets where you go. So it's very interdependent. I think that product leaders and managers need to look at it in a very holistic way to understand the full cycle. How am I managing or leading this from concept to market?
Mm-hmm. So there's one question from Iqbal, which says, what in your experience works best for innovation, design by committee or a collaborative design?
Collaborative design, most definitely. And this is what I found across the organizations that I've observed and where I've done research. Much more, as I mentioned earlier, by only creating committees or specific groups dedicated to innovation, you're ignoring the knowledge and the potential of other team members who work in different functions, who also work in different geographies in markets. So I believe that collaborative design is most important. And that's where I'm seeing some interesting practices from companies like Wipro and Philips. Wipro in India is doing some fantastic work around this and creating design pods and And Philips has their own co-creation activity, kind of a world tour where they work with different teams in different markets to make sure everybody's involved in the design phase and that they can contribute their knowledge and their ideas.
So there's an interesting question again from Rajesh, which says, quite often the internal teams located in different locations compete with each other in product development companies. As a product leader, how can one, lead these teams to collaborate instead of compete?
So how to move from
Yeah, so
more
within the internal culture of the organization, when the teams are not, physically or physically close to each other, they tend to compete with each other. There'll be an India team versus a US team. So how do leaders make them collaborate instead of competing against each other?
this starts at the very early stage, and again, that's why I mentioned it's very important to have a collaborative product management process. So look, and you need to make this happen in the front end stage. So as you kick off the project and you're still defining design and development needs, to bring the teams together, bring these team members together to have to collaborate around this, bring in their ideas, their experiences in the various markets, and for them to experience and observe and share their different thoughts and ideas. And this can only happen really at right before kickoff or as a kickoff, where teams can physically meet, maybe have a weekend together or a week product planning session, and they can share their ideas and observe some of the common challenges and opportunities that they can optimize. BMW Group in Europe or in Germany does this very well. They'll invite team members from their key markets and bring them to headquarters, and they'll have this kind of forum where everybody shares their market discoveries and knowledge and ideas, and then together co-create concepts that they feel will better speak to customer needs in their markets.
So I think, Dr. Karina, those are all the questions that you answered. And thank you so much for the wonderful webinar on leading global innovation, product innovations. And, I think the perspectives that you brought in were excellent, and, they'll really help our participants implement what you found in your research in their, daily work, as many of them are into the product management and product leadership function. And thank you so much for answering all the questions.
Well, I just had 2 more slides because I had promised to share some cases. So I'll just give some examples very quickly for you. And just before we conclude.
Sure.
That's okay?
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So very quickly for those of you who are still on board, and if you have additional questions, please feel free to contact me. Let's see if we can move this forward. I think there we go. So I just wanted to mention very quickly some examples, and I can give more detail too for those of you who are curious. But some of the companies that are doing great work in this area are include Wipro in India. And I mentioned they have really created their service co-innovator to businesses, but they've managed to develop these co-creation workspaces called digital pods that allow cross-cultural and cross-functional teams to move from problem solving to new disruptive solutions within a 24-hour period. So they save time by bringing cross-functional teams together at the very front end, and that way they can address their common knowledge and their ideas and the challenges, and then look at how they can move from sort of the problem solving or the challenge to developing solutions according to customer needs. So they've have a very interesting process. As well as Philips, as I mentioned earlier to you, which is developing this world tour or co-creation process with local teams. So they start local and then they go back to headquarters and integrate everybody's knowledge. And then we have Airbnb, which is creating some interesting processes too, because they look at how to develop more exchange between team members so that team members can better understand each other's roles and in that sense be able to collaborate better together. And they also have ways of working together and sharing knowledge through a common design philosophy and a development philosophy. So I just wanted to share those examples with you very quickly because they refer back to some of the questions. And then, of course, conclude with my contact information. And thank you, merci, and dhanyavad to all of you for participating in the webinar. And I have my book, Leading Global Innovation. You have the title there. If you're interested in learning more about, it addresses the processes from concept to market. And if you'd like, if you have any more questions, please feel free to contact me either through Global Minds Network, my consulting firm, or through my business school, NEOMA. You have the emails on the screen there. So again, and thank you so much to everyone, and very happy to join you this evening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karina. We'll surely, get back to you with more questions. And thank you so much for answering so many of our questions today. Everybody's saying that this was a great webinar. Thank you so much. We'd like to see you back again soon.
My pleasure. Look forward to it.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Bye-bye.